What happens when engineering students are asked to truck-proof a mailbox? Yes. I know there are a lot of mailbox stories on here, but I just learned this story from my dad. Involving my Uncle Dale, family friend who passed away a few months ago. And figured you guys would get a kick out of it. Years ago, back when Uncle Dale and Dad were university students, their engineering professor came to their class with a problem that needed solving. His mailbox was getting broken by someone driving by every night. He and his wife had put up something like 4 or 5 mailboxes, and all 4 or 5 times, the mailbox had been knocked over by someone driving a red truck. This professor offered extra credit to any group of students who could come up with a truck-proof mailbox that not only fit with city regulations but within a budget of $20, which back then was a good-sized chunk of change. Well, if anyone here knows anything about engineers, as Dad puts it, they love solving problems, and if it's engineering students, they'll make it an experience to remember. Dad and Uncle Dale got together and got to work. They found a steel bar that fit within mailbox regulations. Posts have to be a specific height, width and depth, and filled the inside with a mixture of concrete and steel rebars. Once the concrete had cured, they welded 8 rebars to the sides of the bar, bent them in half and stuck it inside a bucket. To add extra weight, they filled the bucket with the heaviest rocks they could find. As a finishing touch, they painted it brown and black to look like wood, and put the ugliest mailbox we could find on sale on top, welding it down for good measure. They brought this monstrosity into class. Moore dragged it because it was so heavy, and told the professor to bury the bucket where the mailbox stood. Since they were the first to turn in their project, the professor agreed to give it a try. That night, the professor and his wife were awoken by a metallic bang, followed by a lot of cursing. They went outside, and wouldn't you know it, there was that red truck speeding away, the mailbox still standing. At the base was a broken wooden baseball bat. 2 days later, the professor gets a bill in the mail for a hospital visit. Turns out when the passenger hit the mailbox, he did some serious damage to his arm and shoulder. They were planning on suing the professor, but the professor hired a lawyer who basically told the plaintiffs, "You're just going to admit that you were vandalizing the mailbox multiple times?" That shut them up. To the best of my dad's knowledge, the mailbox is still standing. The other students who still brought in mailboxes had theirs gifted to different professors throughout the town and are also still standing. We solved this on my mailbox by putting a large spring at the base. You could bend the post down all the way to the ground and watch it flail around afterwards. It was more for people backing into it than vandalism, and it worked perfectly. My husband is a mason in a beach town in Florida. He had created multiple, decorative, mailboxes that had block, concrete, and rebarb in the middle about a decade ago for a few homeowners whose homes he had done block and stucco work for. On A1 ABC, people kept knocking their mailboxes down. Turned out it was drunk drivers. After a couple of totaled cars, ordinances against hubby's creations, and similar ones as it was catching, started going up. Friend of mine got sick of having his box run over by drunk drivers. So he designed a mailbox made out of concrete, rebar with a wide flared base so that if someone knocked the box over, the base tips up underneath the car. This would basically total the vehicle. He bought a huge box for the post, painted a big bullseye on it with the words, "Bullseye," underneath. This was easily 20 years ago. That mailbox hasn't been touched all this time. I have a similar, accidental, revenge story from my childhood. For reasons unknown, Someone started hitting my parents' garbage cans with their car every week to knock them over. This was before there were readily available security cameras. And it happened at random times between 1 and 4 a.m. They sat up trying to see who it was several times. Never caught them. Filed multiple police reports. Nothing was ever done. I can't remember exactly for how long, but definitely over a month. Then 1 week. After building a new shed, there was a garbage can full of construction debris. Remnants of 2x4s. Some cinder blocks. Even some leftover cement from building the support pillars. They really took anything you put in the can in the old days. You can probably see where this is going. Around 3 a.m. there was a horrendous crash. We ran outside to see what had happened. The car was nowhere to be seen. The garbage can was still standing upright. There was half of a bumper and pieces of smashed headlight all over the ground. They never came back to reclaim their bumper. And for some strange reason from that day forward the cans were unmolested. Edit. Wow. The paragraph order was all messed up. I have no idea what caused that. Restored. As a mail carrier, I've heard a few stories, and have seen examples myself of mailbox ingenuity. One that stands out is an unusual and obviously very old box out in the country way back when while I was training. I asked the regular carrier about it, who told me that farmer on my route had trouble with one of his neighbor kids constantly bashing in his box. So, finally, he bought the largest mailbox he could find, and put a regular mailbox inside of it. He then proceeded to fill the empty space inside with concrete, so it looked like a normal large country mailbox. But when you opened the door, you just saw a small mailbox encased in the middle of a solid wall. As a final touch, he painted a big target on the side. The regular said that the neighbor kid tried to smash it just once. That thing outlived the farmer by years. Now this is the extra credit my ADHD engineering ass would go for. Friend of mine had a similar story. However, someone was driving over mailboxes with an old truck instead of using a bat. They engineered a similar design as you described but welded the post to the center a Z-shaped anchor. They buried the Z shape. When the vehicle came by to drive over the mailbox this time, mailbox tipped over. Half of the Z dug into the ground, the other right through the radiator. The vehicle was stopped in its tracks and couldn't leave. The teens that were vandals ditched the vehicle and ran, only to be caught later by the sheriff for hit and run. This solution was not allowed in a friend's country area as mailbox posts were mandated to break away if a car hit them. So my friend put a rock about 18 in diameter in front of the mailbox in some tall grass. Basically a random rock that looked like many other rocks in the area. No idea how that got there. Not my property, so that's a highway department problem. Like roadkill. The pickup truck was totaled. He never heard from any insurance or other threatening feedback. But nearly every second post office box had a rock somewhere in front of it shortly after that. The ironic thing was that the asshat who destroyed his truck was the son of the woman who delivered the mail. I had a problem with snowplows mowing off 4x4 wood mailbox posts. Got a piece of 4 inches OD oil drill pipe. I think it was 3/8 walled. Welded a bracket and bolted the mailbox down. Augured it 4 feet and concreted it. It only took them once to hit it. Never again. I'm sure in 100 years someone is gonna cuss me if they ever need to replace it. Don't mess with a farm kid that has resources. Edit. I'm the only house within a mile each direction. My family settled this farm in 1855. That mailbox has been in the same spot since they delivered mail with horse and wagons. It's also in its own gravel lane along a row of cedar trees 15 feet off the edge of the road. I try to plow it myself so they don't have to, but I can't always get out there when they start at 3:30 a.m. Growing up, my next-door neighbor was a former Los Alamos Labs engineer. Someone decided to mess with his mailbox and ours. So he and my father used a lathe to put solid steel piping and welded the mailbox to it. Buried it 3 feet deep with a post-hole digger and used cement. Just like with you. There was screaming and a bent aluminum bat. Yeah. Hitting an immovable object with a bat from inside a car will really mess up your arm. ROFL. I'd love to hear about the other mailboxes. One of the people on the road I took to work had a similar problem. They didn't change the mailbox or post, they built a stone wall immediately before the mailbox and tipped it with a metal wedge of 1/4-inch plate steel. The mailbox was protected from moving objects, yet still easily accessible for the rural carrier. Similar story here. Back in the mid-90s, some jackass kept smashing the mailboxes in our neighborhood every few months. So my dad got a 3-inch diameter steel pipe, filled it with concrete after planting it, and fabricated a mailbox to weld to the top. The mailbox was itself made of 1/4-inch steel and painted a glossy black. One night a few weeks later, we hear the telltale revving of a truck and the thunk 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 of them hitting mailboxes. I didn't get to the porch until the dipshit was on the ground. But apparently he was sitting on the side of the pickup's bed, and when he hit ours, the force of it knocked him off. His buddy drove off without him. But that was fine in the long run because he needed to get an ambulance ride anyway for the broken arm and concussion. Dude never threatened to sue or anything. And I have no idea what, if any, repercussions he had from the vandalism. Never had that problem again though. And that mailbox was still standing last time I went by the old house. So it's held up for something like 25 years or so. An old guy the first knew in a semi-rural area was having similar problems. Not from a baseball bat, but some clown in a Jeep or 4x4 mowing down his mailbox. And its replacement. However, what Bozo didn't suspect was that the old guy was not only an engineer, but a roughneck. His response: take a 12-foot length of drill pipe, bury it 8 feet deep in concrete, and weld a new mailbox on top. The thing about drill pipe? It is made of insanely hard stuff. Like, it can't be scrapped by normal means because even just cutting it into lengths requires very specialist equipment. Anyway, come the next nocturnal assault on the old boy's mailbox, there is an almighty crash, followed by frantic engine revving and the sound of footsteps running off into the night. It turns out that the perpetrator had hit the new construction at quite some speed, and hadn't managed to move it an inch. Instead, the front end of his vehicle had wrapped itself around the drill pipe and could not be extricated. Of course, the kicker: the old guy was prosecuted for reckless endangerment, or some such garbage. He had to pay a hefty fine and remove his new mailbox. But in fairness, its replacement was never touched again. Honestly, keep the mailbox stories coming. Tears of joy. Loved every one of them. Is this what caused the court case Cletus Snay et al. v. Matthew Burr in the state of Ohio? I just did a quick Google search and this is what comes up. Accidentally wrecked my neighbor's mailbox. My windshield was really dirty and I pulled onto our street. The sun was in absolute the wrong spot and I played right into it and got kinda stuck on the small chunk of cement. I was trying to pull off the main road into the dirt to roll down my window when I hit Fishboy? Oh hi. Did you run into my mailbox? Fucker came out of nowhere. Quote. I went back after and fixed it. About 6 months later I noticed they got a new one. I asked her at school about it. Someone else nailed it and took off. I live in Colorado. It's not uncommon to see mailboxes made from a large cage filled with rocks. Similar to this. https i.p.neg.com/564x/10b6c86952476d3171226b1023b7e.jpg. I built the nailbox. I took a larger size mailbox and drilled about 200 holes all over it and installed the nails so they were coming out of the box. Then I took a smaller sized mailbox and slid that into the larger box. A layer of Quikrete between the two boxes and the mounted to a railroad tie. Placed vertically in the ground. A few weeks later I was in the bar down the street and this guy is telling me how his son broke his wrist the other night. Lol.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Haircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.